Hello viewers, today's lecture will be focused on the world population and demographic dynamics. The word demography has been derived from two words. One, demis meaning population and second, graphic meaning to draw. Demography has been defined as the scientific study of human populations. Demography has also been defined as the study of growth, structure and composition of population. Demography will focus on things like population size, growth and decline, population distribution and other population characteristics. So following this, demographic dynamics simply means the trends and changes in population growth, migration, urbanization, population density and age structures. Demographers seek to understand the population dynamics by investigating into three main demographic processes: birth, migration, aging including death. This is because all of these will contribute to changes in population, including how people inhabit Earth. Today, there is a growing interest in the study of demographic dynamics, and the demographers seek to describe this phenomena related to this change and understand their causes using reliable data and statistical processing of these data. Elements or components of demographic dynamics. The components of demographic dynamics means the factors that lead to these changes. Fertility. It is the natural capability to produce offspring, and it is measured by numerous methods of fertility rates. Fertility refers to the number of live births women have. Fertility is determined by number of factors such as social, cultural, economic, health and other environmental factors. Measures of fertility will include crude birth rate, total fertility rate, age-specific fertility rate, etc. The total fertility rate is defined as the average number of children that would be born to a woman throughout her lifetime or childbearing age if she were to pass through all her childbearing years at same rates as women now in each group. It sums up in a single number the age-specific fertility rates of all women at a given point of time. Age-specific fertility rate is simply the number of children born alive to females in a specific age group. It is equal to the number of births to females in a specific age group in a year divided by mid-year population of females of the same group multiplied by 1000. Total fertility rate will be equal to sum of all age-specific fertility rates multiplied by the age interval. Crude birth rate is simply equal to total number of births in a year divided by mid-year population multiplied by 1000. The table 1 now shows the crude birth rates and total fertility rate for the world and major regions. The total fertility rate is 2.5 and births per 1000 are 20 for the world. Mortality. Mortality refers to the deaths that occur within a population. While we all eventually die, the probability of dying during a given time period is linked to many factors such as age, sex, race, occupation and social class. The incidence of death can reveal much about a population's standard of living and health care. The mortality can be measured by several measures or rates such as crude death rate, infant mortality rate, child mortality rate and maternal mortality ratio. Infant mortality rate is equal to number of deaths of infants under age 1 in a given year divided by total live births in that year multiplied by 1000. And maternal mortality ratio is equal to number of maternal deaths due to complication in pregnancy divided by total live births into 1 lakh. Child mortality rate is equal to number of deaths of children of years 1 to 4 divided by total number of children of that age group multiplied by 1000. Now, the table 2 shows the infant mortality rate and crude death rate for the world and major regions. The infant mortality rate for world is 38 and deaths per 1,000. Migration. Migration is the geographic movement of people across a specific boundary for the purpose of establishing a new permanent and semi-permanent residence. Along with fertility and mortality, migration is a very important component of population change. The terms immigration and emigration are used to refer to moves between countries. The parallel terms in-migration and out-migration are used for movement between areas within a country. This concept can be understood through the following. Immigration means influx of population, and immigration rate is the number of immigrants arriving at a destination per 1,000 population in a given year. Immigration rate is equal to number of immigrants divided by total population at destination into 1,000. Emigration is the outflux, that is, number of emigrants departing an area of origin per 1,000 population at that area of origin in a given year. Emigration rate is equal to number of emigrants divided by total population at origin multiplied by 1,000. The table 3 shows the phenomena of international migration in terms of number of migrants in 2013 and increment in change between 1990 and 2013. Also, the proportion of female migrants along with global distribution is shown. For the world as a whole, 232 million people migrated internationally, and there has been an increment of 77 million during 1990 and 2013. During this period, the proportion of female migrants was 48%. In more developed regions, proportion of female migrants was more at 52% as compared to less developed countries at 43%. Urbanization and distribution. Urbanization is the increase in the population living in urban areas, the process of people moving to cities or densely settled areas. Population distribution refers to the patterns of settlement and dispersal of population within a country and other areas. Urbanization is a very predictable component of industrialization and the demographic transition. Urbanization can be gauged by the number of people living in urban areas or the percentage of urbanized population. Now, the table 4 shows the percentage of urbanized population in the world and major regions. More than 50% of the world population is urbanized. Changes in age structure, dependency ratio and demographic dividend. The dependent population is that section of population falling in the economically unproductive section, that is the young dependents falling in the age group of 15 years or below, and the old dependents, which include section of population above 65 years. The dependency ratio is the ratio of dependent population, that is, population below 15 years and above 65 years, on the working population, which is lying between 15 to 64 years. A declining dependency ratio, which is mirrored by an expansion of working age population, can create a window of opportunity for development. This is called the demographic dividend. A fall in the number of dependents in a country enable households to increase investments, particularly in human capital of their children, whereas a rise in the number of working population can expand a country's productive potential and output. Changes in the age structure imply changes in the proportion of young population and old population, as also the dependency ratios. Dependency ratio is equal to the percentage of population below 15 added to the percentage of population above 65 divided by population age 15 to 64. All these factors stated above are largely the major components of the demographic changes. So, by studying the trends and movements in these factors amount to studying demographic dynamics. Table 5 shows the percentage of population lying in different age groups of less than 16 or more than 66. Now we come to the major demographic dynamics. Changes in population growth. During the 20th century, the earth has sustained a remarkable and unprecedented increase in its human population. Since 1900, world population has increased from a total of about 1.7 billion people to to 5.9 billion in 1998 and to 7.2 billion in 2014. The most populous country in 2014 was China, followed by India. However, in 2050, it is projected that India will replace China. The UN has projected population as per three variants. The medium variant is the possible future pattern of population if the behavioral change in childbearing resembles those of the past for population at similar levels of fertility. As per this variant, population is predicted to be 9.6 billion in 2050. In case of high variant, the total fertility rate is 1/2 child more than the median variant, and as per this variant, population is predicted to reach 10.9 billion in 2050. In case of low variant, the total fertility rate is 1.5 less than the median variant, and as per this variant, population is projected to rise to 8.3 billion in 2050. Now, population change can also be described by using a simple formula. Population at a later date is equal to population at an earlier date plus births minus deaths plus immigration minus emigration. What is growth rate? It is the rate at which population is increasing or decreasing in a given year due to natural increase and net migration expressed as a percentage of the base population. The growth rate takes into account all components of population growth, that is births, deaths and migration. And net migration is the net effect of immigration and emigration. The table 6 describes the latest numbers of population in 2014 as well as the change between 2010 and 2015 in terms of an average annual increment. These figures are further complemented by annual average growth rate of respective areas during the same period. For the world, population was 72,044 million in 2014. An increment has been to the extent of 81.7 million for the period 2010 and 2015, while the annual average growth rate was 1.15%. Changes in fertility rates. Globally, changes in fertility since 1950 have been extraordinary. Total fertility rate dropped from high levels at very fast pace. This is due to voluntary decisions to reduce family sizes. However, they still vary considerably among different countries. In the less developed countries, fertility decline has been slower than other developing countries. Fertility levels are lower in developed nations because more women in developing countries work outside the home and tend to marry late or use contraception and abortion. In 2014, the total fertility rate for the world was around 2.5 children per woman. Diagram 2 shows the trend of total fertility rate starting from 1950 and the progressions for 2040. The lines for all three regions are seen declining and converging at the total fertility rate of 2 children per woman in 2040. Mortality is declining, but it is still high. Life expectancy at birth for the world as a whole rose from 64.8 years in the period 1990 and 1995 to 70 years in 2010 and 2050. That is a gain of 5.2 years. In the less developed countries, life expectancy is still low, but it is expected to increase if efforts to reduce child mortality are made. The least developed countries made substantial progress, gaining 8.9 years of life expectancy over the same period. Recent decades have witnessed considerable progress in reducing child mortality. Worldwide, less than 5 mortalities estimated to have fallen by 40% between 1994 and 2014, from 86 to 52 deaths per 1,000 live births. Among world areas, the largest absolute change is less than 5 mortality over the period occurred in Africa, with a decline from 168 to 101 deaths per 1,000 live births. Not only this, probability of dying between ages of 15 and 60 is widely used as a summary indicator of adult mortality, representing the risk of dying during working and reproductive ages. Worldwide, 157 out of every 1,000 15-year-olds would die before age 60 if subject to age-specific mortality rates, prevailing in the period 2010 and 2015. This probability was lowest in North America and highest in Africa. International migration is growing. This phenomena is increasing in the size, scope, complexity and demographic significance over past 20 years. In 2013, number of international migrants worldwide reached 232 million, up from 154 in 1990. Although this represents an increase of 78 million people, the share of international migrants in world population increased only slightly from 2.9% in 1990 to 3.2% in 2013. Net international migration has become the primary source of growth in the more developed regions. The share of international migrants who reside in more developed regions rose from 53% in 1990 to 59% in 2013. In 2013, Europe and Asia combined host nearly two-thirds of all international migrants worldwide. Between 1990 and 2013, countries in the more developed regions gained more than twice as many international migrants as the less developed regions. North America hosted the largest change in the number of international migrants in that time period, with net increase of 1.1 million migrants per year, followed by Europe with an annual increase of 1 million and Asia with slightly less than 1 million in 2013. Women constituted 48% of the stock of international migrants, yet there is a considerable regional difference, with women accounting for 52% of the migrants in the more developed regions compared with 43% in the less developed regions. Since 1990, the less developed nations have witnessed a drop in the proportion of women among all migrants. Next is the rapid pace of urbanization. In 2008, share of urban population for the first time exceeded the share of population living in rural areas at global level and even in the less developed regions, where majority is still living in rural areas. Decade 2000 to 2010 was the first time in the world where less urbanized regions exhibited growth of urban population faster than that of rural population. Urban population increased from 2.3 billion in 1994 to 3.9 billion in 2014, with 3/4 of its population living in urban settlements in 2014. Latin America and Caribbean is now predominantly urban region, with level of urbanization comparable to those of North America and many European countries. By contrast, Africa and Asia are considerably less urbanized, with 41% and 47% respectively. It is projected that by 2030, urban population of less developed countries is projected to increase around 41% due to rural-urban migration, natural increase and reclassification of rural to urban areas. Now this diagram shows the increasing pace of urbanization of world population from 1970 and projections up to 2050. World population is aging. Now, aging is a phenomena by which older people become proportionally larger share of the total population. This is inevitable when people live longer and choose to have fewer children. Not surprisingly, therefore, patterns of declining fertility and mortality over past 2 decades have led to significant shifts in age structure of the world population. Although more advanced in Europe and North America, population aging is occurring or will soon begin in all major areas of the world globally. The share of old people increased from 9% in 1994 to 12% in 2014. Oldest people are the world's fastest growing age groups. In 2014, the annual growth rate of population aged 60 years or older will be almost triple the growth rate for population as a whole in absolute terms. The number of people aged 60 years or older has almost doubled between 1994 and 2014. During this period, Asia added the largest number of older people, while growth in the number of people was fastest in Latin America and Caribbean and second fastest in Africa. While the growth was slowest in Europe, it added more people to its population, that is 38 million, than any other region. In 2014, about two-thirds of world population aged 60 years or older lived in the less developed regions. Youth population changes are varied across regions. Currently, 1.2 billion people in this age group represent around a sixth of the world's total population. The population aged 15 to 24 years is still increasing rapidly in Africa, whereas it is declining or projected to decline in all major regions. Although global fertility levels are projected to decline in all major areas, the youthful age structure of less developed regions ensures that there will be a record number of young people till 2035. So currently, the less developed regions have greater opportunity to reap the demographic bonus. Now we come up to the importance of studying the demographic dynamics. The study of demographic dynamics helps in addressing a wide variety of scientific and policy questions. It helps in understanding the causes and consequences of the demographic phenomena. These dynamics are important to be understood because they will exercise major influence on the development and on inclusive and balanced growth and outcomes in the coming decades. Demographic dynamics, including changes in population growth, age structures, and distribution, are closely linked to the national and global development challenges and their solutions, because challenges cannot be overcome without paying attention to the demographic dynamics. Also, the knowledge of this field will determine the potential for poverty reduction and economic growth, and health and service provision, and for achieving environmentally sustainable and socially inclusive growth. The welfare of communities and families can be enhanced if population dynamics are managed and monitored. This field of study has important implications for the consumption and availability of natural resources. Now coming up to the conclusions, the changing demographic features of population in any region have a very important bearing on policy making in that region. There is a need to slow down growth as it will help in reducing the pressures on the ecosystems and natural resources, and also help in attaining a more equal distribution of energy. It is also very important to invest in young people as well as promote healthy aging and economic well-being in old age by providing enabling and supporting environments where older people are integrated into the development process as an asset and not as a liability. It is also equally important to plan for the future urban growth, including proper infrastructure and access to basic education, health and services. The countries must also ensure an international dialogue and cooperation on migration between sending and receiving regions to ensure that migration occurs in a safe and legal conditions with full respect for human rights. The government and international community need to address the development consequences of demographic dynamics before they unfold, adopting active planning based on foreseeable demographic trends and projections. So this is all for today's lecture. Thank you. Next time we will again discuss another interesting aspect of demographic dynamics.